Welcome to Stress Awareness Month 2012. For the first time in the country, International Stress Management Association India inaugurated this historic event at Ravindra Bharati, Hyderabad, to bring stress awareness among all sections of the people for their effective stress management.
Now, I request E.S. Apparao garu to come and give. When I asked, he suggested one thing. Though I am the head of the industries and commerce, but who is facing stress? An industrialist, not me. I said that, sir, you are the right person to talk and give the examples how this stress impact the productivity.
Sri Subir, Sri Balasubramanian, Dr. Girwani, and ladies and gentlemen. I have no claims to be an authority on stress, but I can only say that courtesy Rajiv Gandhi, when he became Prime Minister, he introduced a 1-week course for the IAS officers every year. So every year we have taken a 1-week training program. Its first objective is Sakatika. That means you are supposed to go and unwind for 1 week, forgetting all your day-to-day work and hassles. Then as part of that training program, I attended one course in 1995 in Tata Institute of Management, Pune, where for the first time I was exposed to this concept of stress and how to simply manage stress in day-to-day life. I can say with some confidence that I have been a great beneficiary of this, and I would recommend to everyone who is here or who is outside that they should follow these simple stress relaxation techniques, which would be very useful. First, difference will be felt by your own family members, because that is the most important thing. My wife and children noticed that there was a lot of change in me, without myself realizing it. So then that also had a change in the work atmosphere and all the other things. So that is how I benefited, and I hope this stress awareness month will create more awareness among those people who will have mostly the stress felt, but almost everyone has stress. I would slightly extend the definition given by Dr. Girwani about stress. The stress, she has said, is a state of mind. Yes, it is state of mind. But then perhaps we can expand it and we can say that it reflects its symptoms in the body. Because if it remains only as a state of mind, then perhaps others will not see. Maybe we will also not notice it. So the stress also reflects in certain symptoms in the body, which of course our Balasubramanian has tried to explain: headache, this, that, and all those things. So various symptoms depending on the individual symptoms. Now, a lot of us believe that stress is a very modern day concept. I had been, because as I said, since 95 I was interested in this topic. I had seen some writings where even in Upanishads it is mentioned. See, that means Upanishads we think are at least 3000 years old. So even that time there was stress. So that means it's not a modern day concept. The Upanishads say that since it is the self by which we suffer, so it is the self by which we find relief. So now modern day management classes, if you attend any programs, what they say is you cannot change anyone. You cannot change your wife, you cannot change your children, you cannot change your friends. The only thing you can change is yourself. That is what the Upanishads have said long back. So we have perhaps reinvented, or maybe the same knowledge is passed on. And they have said that You can't look anywhere, you have to look inside you. So it further says that the nucleus of stress lies in the inner chamber of one's own being. So the whole, the whole basis or genesis of the stress is within us. We don't have to look anywhere else. Let us not blame anyone else. If we are having stress, we are only the cause, and perhaps we should see how we should try and reduce the stress on ourselves. So this is the description of stress. Then why do we as human beings face stress? I am a student of science. I had actually done MS in botany. We have all known that in the evolutionary process, the brain has also evolved. But a part of the brain still is an animal part, and a part is the advanced part. So the animal part is what controls the emotions, the mobility, all these things, the responses, the emotions, and all those things. Now, because of this dual nature of the brain, all of us are susceptible to get stress. And where this stress, generates. Now, if we go to the basic, nature of the animals, which human beings also are, there are four, distinguishing traits of any animal. One is self-preservation. Second is hunger. Third is sleep. Fourth is sex. So then perhaps you cannot find any animal which does not have these four characteristics. And human beings also are, as as a continuum or as an advanced animal, we also have these four basic urges which we have. And these basic urges, what do? They create desire in us. If we have hunger, we have the desire to eat. If we have, self-preservation, suppose someone tries to attack us, we try to run away. If suppose some tiger comes and attacks us, we try to run away. In the same way, sleep, everyone needs sleep. So these are the things, biological requirements, and because of this, the desires arise. And the desires have both positive emotions and negative emotions. Positive emotions are good, we need not bother about them. What are the negative emotions that come out of the desires? As I said just now, anger is one of the major, things. Then jealousy, greed, depression, and pride. These are the negative emotions that come out of any desire, if the desire is not fulfilled. If the desire is fulfilled, then there is no problem. If the desire is not fulfilled, these are the things that are going to come. Now, once these negative emotions take control of us, how do we get out of these negative emotions? The best way is to have self-awareness and self-control, which are required to gain freedom from these negative emotions. And the freedom is really the knowledge and ability to choose our responses. That's what perhaps this, the knowledge and ability to have responses to control the negative emotions in us is what perhaps is the intention of the Stress Awareness Month. Perhaps we should create this awareness among as many people as possible so that we will have a better society to begin. Now, having talked in general about the stress and having had a framework of what I mean by stress, now I would like to go into the stress in productivity. That is the topic given to me. This comes under the self-preservation. Of the four things I have mentioned, the self-preservation is what is productivity. If the company is not productive, then they cannot survive. So, what happens in a company when the company wants to be competitive is that it would like to have higher productivity per head of employees, higher productivity per unit of investment, and higher productivity of quality. Now, this keeps on going, and sometimes the other things also will be there, like greed and other things. But the productivity function is actually controlled in an enterprise by means of the management's viewpoint. For some, it is the money which comes. For some, it is the quality. For some, it is the marketability. Like this, various people view it, depending on the type of situation and all. But I found the best definition given by the Japanese. Their definition, which I found is the best. They also have the quality circuits and all. They say that the productivity is a function. It is a function of the optimal benefit to the management, workers and consumers. So it's not a unidimensional or a bidimensional or a two-dimensional thing, but it is a three-dimensional structure where the consumer, the management and the workers who are involved, they should have the optimal benefit. If one of them is not getting benefit, then the productivity is of no use, because it may benefit, as I said earlier, if you are only trying to get maximum profits, it will benefit only the management, but the customer may not be happy with it. In the same way, if we only try to produce the maximum number of goods, then the management may be benefited, and because of the nature of economy and all, the customer may be benefited, but the worker may not be benefited. So, it is important that all these three should be optimized in achieving a productivity. This definition I find is perhaps the most suitable definition for productivity. And if we can adopt this definition, perhaps the stress in the flow, manufacturing floor or in the workplace will be much less. Having said this, there are a number of situations where things keep changing. So even if you establish an equilibrium, and even if you try to have these things, but still it is very difficult to define where it ends. For example, if you see the definition of richness given by Swami Vivekananda, I am just giving this because these things keep changing. Swami Vivekananda says, richness, someone asked him what is richness. He said, it's not earning more. Richness is not earning more. Richness is also not saving more. Richness is also not spending more. So what is it? It is when you need no more. So you are rich when you need no more. So a sage can be very rich if he says that I don't need anymore. So this is what Swami Vivekananda has said. So perhaps the productivity angle also should have this type of a universal view. Otherwise, the managements may follow different, there will be more stress and strain, but we may not achieve this. So what we have to achieve is that the productivity should be in such a way that neither the management, nor the workers, nor the consumers need to know. Thank you.